I think it depends on a case-by-case basis. I think he's trying to get a better deal for
But you acknowledge
Americans,
that he's
and he's trying to extract the best concessions.
But you acknowledge that he is also
can.
slapping tariffs on the entire world.
As I think a means of trying to leverage and get
there have been countries that have lowered tariffs, and Trump has still levied tariffs on them.
Right.
Conservative media figures and MAGA advocates Lydia Moahan and Scott Jennings appeared on Abby Phillips' CNN program for a group discussion. Scott Jennings, flashing his familiar grin, joined Lydia in debating the issues being covered. In this video, we'll review a few segments of Abby Phillips' show that featured both of them, and I'll be sharing my own perspective on the conversation. Let's dive in and watch it together.
Tonight, Donald Trump freezes Canada out. He says he canceled trade negotiations with them over an ad featuring Ronald Reagan, paid for by Ontario's government. That has been airing in the United States for a while now, and here's just part of it.
Throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
The Reagan Foundation says the ad misrepresented the words of Ronald Reagan, and they're looking into legal action. Trump claimed the ad was fake and that Reagan actually loved tariffs. Well, we'll let you decide for yourself. Take a listen.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is, first, homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing and stop making the innovative management and technological changes they need to succeed in world markets. And then, while all this is going on, something even worse occurs. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs.
That was Ronald Reagan in his own words, a very clear argument against protectionism, against tariffs, Scott. So why is Trump so mad about this? Why is he so triggered by this Reagan quote?
Well, I think he was triggered mostly because he had Canadians running attack ads against him while he's in the middle of trying to negotiate a trade agreement with Canada.
You call that an attack ad, or Ronald Reagan
he was obviously
an attack ad?
Obviously, he had the government or one of the provinces of Canada, spending money to message against the U.S. trading position while the two nations are trying to work out a trade deal. Yes, he had a negative reaction.
He's quoting a United States president and showing images of the U.S. flag next to the Canadian flag and suggesting that we should just be friends. How is that an attack ad?
If the Canadians want to run negative ads against the United States while we're trying to negotiate some trade agreement, be my guest. They actually don't, because when Trump raised an objection to it, the guy in Ontario, Ford, pulled it down, because I'm sure the federal government in Canada was like, wait a minute, you're messing up our country. We just had a great meeting with Trump the other day, and you're
the other
messing it up.
issue is that, Ronald Reagan was right. He was right about tariffs. And he makes a really important point, which is that when you see tariffs as a permanent economic solution to American companies not being competitive against the world, it only makes them less competitive in the long run. And the problem for Trump is that he could argue that tariffs should be of a short duration for a particular goal. But what he really says is that tariffs are good. They help us raise a lot of money, and they should be here basically as a basic premise for how we organize our economy. That's the part that I think he's probably triggered by.
Well, I think that ad is a little unfair because it is taken out of context. The context of that is that, yes, Reagan was promoting free trade, but the Prime Minister of Japan was just about to come to the White House, and Reagan had actually placed tariffs on a number of goods from Japan. And if you listen to the full speech that Reagan he says, as I've often said, our commitment to free trade is also a commitment to fair trade. So as he was advocating for free trade, he was also levying
but
tariffs.
Nobody's arguing. That's exactly my
as well.
Well, no, that's exactly the point that I was making. No one's arguing against targeted tariffs, because Joe Biden did the same thing. Other United States presidents have used tariffs in a targeted way to achieve particular economic goals. But you're glossing over the part where Donald Trump has made it clear the tariffs are not meant to be temporary. They're meant to just be a permanent state of affairs in how we conduct business in the world. That's what Trump has said with his own mouth, and you can't gloss over that. Even in this example, Ronald Reagan was basically saying, we don't want to put tariffs on Japan. We're doing it in this particular instance so that you change your trading policies. Trump is not saying that in the cases where he's slapping tariffs on the entire world.
I think it depends on a case-by-case basis. I think he's trying to get a better deal for
But you acknowledge
Americans,
that
he's trying to extract the best concessions.
But you acknowledge that he is also
can.
slapping tariffs on the entire world.
As I think a means of trying to leverage and get better.
There have been countries that have lowered tariffs, and Trump has still levied tariffs on them.
Right.
How is that not just putting tariffs on? Because in his mind, it's a way of raising money for the United States.
And he has raised $200 billion.
Well, guess where it's coming from?
I want to pause here for a moment because this clip really says a lot. I'm actually glad Abby Phillip played the full segment, forcing Scott Jennings and Lydia Mohan to watch it in its entirety. Yet, even after seeing the whole thing, they still claim it's taken out of context. Just the usual MAGA talking points. What this really shows is how drastically the Republican Party and even the broader American government have shifted to the right since the Reagan era of the 1980s. Back then, Ronald Reagan was considered the ultimate conservative hero before Donald Trump took over that role. But if Reagan were to appear today with the exact same policies he had back then, MAGA supporters would likely label him a liberal or a Reno. You can almost hear Scott Jennings dismissing him, saying something like, "We don't need to listen to this rhino Ronald Reagan, the former actor who worked with the Actors Union." Just imagine the modern Republican Party reacting to Reagan today. They'd probably treat him like some left-wing moderate. And once again, Scott Jennings proves how disingenuous he can be, complaining about Canadians supposedly running an attack ad against the U.S., while conveniently ignoring how many times Donald Trump insulted Canada during his first term. Compared to the countless outrageous things Trump has said, that's one of the mildest. Still, if any other president had said something similar, people would have been outraged. I remember back in 2016, Trump claimed that Canadians crossed the border to buy shoes in the U.S., scuff them up to make them look used, and then pretend they owned them before crossing back, just to avoid taxes or tariffs. Imagine any other president making that kind of accusation about our closest ally, both geographically and politically. Yet here we are, with the MAGA movement and Donald Trump cozying up to dictators while picking fights with trusted allies like Canada. It's completely absurd.
This is from a CNBC report. Tariff costs U.S. companies $1.2 trillion just this year. We're not even at the end of the year, with consumers taking most of that hit. There is a cost. Americans are paying higher prices. Inflation is back up now to 3% year over year. That's an increase, the highest increase in several months.
Yeah, that's right. There is an affordability crisis in our country right now. And I think what Donald Trump heard was the truth in that ad, which is this is bad for business, this is bad for consumers, and this is bad for workers. And the reason why he was so triggered right at this point is because we are less than 2 weeks away from critical Supreme Court oral arguments that decide the fate of his tariff policy. And so for him, I think he sees this as might take a massive hit to my potential tariff policy if there is this ad running it across the country or wherever it was running, I'm not sure exactly where it was running, and if people learn the truth about this. The other thing I'll say is this made it worse. Donald Trump cutting off negotiations with Canada only raised this issue for all Americans to hear, and now everybody knows about this ad, to where I am not sure your average family was going to pay attention to this ad anyway. Maybe they were going to, maybe they kind of blow it off, change the channel, whatever. But now let me tell you, I can guarantee you more Americans have heard it now than they were going to when it just started running.
Here's the key issue, and you raised it. It's this Supreme Court case. I've spoken to the president about this when I interviewed him this year. He does not just view the tariffs as economic policy. He views them as foreign policy. He thinks maybe half or more than half of the peace deals that he's negotiated were done in part because he had the power to use tariffs to get people to the table, and he believes that it will dramatically weaken the presidency and therefore the United States if they rule the Liberation Day tariffs and the power to let them out of order.
Thank you for saying that, because I think, again, it just bolsters what I was saying earlier, which is that this is not a Reagan-esque view of tariffs. He thinks of tariffs as just his play tool. And that might be nice for him to think about that, but there is a constitutional issue with it, which is that the power to tariff does not lie with the president. It lies with Congress.
And again, it's about the effectiveness of it. And also, let's be honest, with the way that he's talked about Canada, the way he has disrespected them, it feels like this ad, frankly, was a soft response given the way that he has treated them. I mean, this has been our neighbor. They have been nothing but good to us. They've helped us out in times of crisis. And so to me, they're owed a little pettiness. They are owed this kind of response, because the reality is that the president has gone out of his way to embarrass this country as much as possible. And so I'm not surprised that they would take this avenue in order to alert the American people of the larger issue. They're trying to win the narrative war. They understand what's at stake. I don't know if our president does.
That's basically what I was saying earlier. But let's be honest. Canada is one of our greatest allies, if not the greatest. They're also our top trading partner. People often claim that Israel is our closest ally, but come on, give me a break. Realistically, it's countries like Canada or the United Kingdom that should hold that spot. Yet Donald Trump seems determined to insult our genuine allies at every turn. So, of course, they're upset about how he's treated them. It's no surprise that many people from those nations have lost interest in visiting the U.S. We're losing hundreds of billions of dollars in tourism because Canadians, Europeans, and people from around the world no longer feel welcome. And honestly, who can blame them? Abby Phillip was absolutely right in her analysis. Lydia Mohan might not have been around during the Reagan years, but Scott Jennings certainly was, and people like him practically worshipped Ronald Reagan back then. Now, when Abby Phillip presents Reagan's exact words to them, their immediate reaction is to dismiss it as out of context and defend Trump with the usual excuses. As Abby pointed out, Trump treats everything, even the White House itself, as his personal possession. His behavior has turned that symbol of leadership into a disgrace, and this delusional, power-hungry mindset is hurting all of us, especially when it comes to the economy. But what do you think about this whole situation? Do you find yourself agreeing with Abby Phillip and the more moderate voices on her panel, or do you side with the far-right takes from Lydia Mohan and Scott Jennings? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next video.